Hello there. I'm going to do a fairly short video here, and on it I want to talk about how an anxiety sufferer needs to have some sort of plan, a plan for recovery, if you like. And the reason I'm doing this is because I watch a lot of different forums, groups, whatever you call it, online, groups of people who are anxiety sufferers who share their experiences with each other. And the thing that strikes me about so many of them is that they live day to day with their anxiety in whatever form it takes. For many it's agoraphobia, for many it's panic attacks. There's so many different variations. But the thing that strikes me the most is that these people don't seem to have a plan as to how they're going to get over this condition. They just live their lives day to day, just basically tolerating or barely tolerating their anxiety. And the fact is that there is a plan. There is a plan anyone can use, and they can use it by themselves. It's not something that's dependent on others to provide help. It's something that the sufferer themselves can use. And they can adapt this plan to their own circumstances, and they can do it at a rate, at a speed that suits them and suits their own individual circumstances. And if I think back on my own anxiety experience, the times when I've made the most progress have been times when I had a clear goal in sight, where I had all the information I needed to get myself out of a situation, and I knew what I had to do. My own particular story of anxiety has been up and down for over so many years, and a lot of it has been aggravated by external circumstances, difficulties in life, which I've had my share of over the years. But through all that, I've gathered an understanding of what anxiety is about and why it happens, and from that I've been able to develop my own particular plan to recover from it. And I'm doing this now because over recent weeks I've had a kind of slow realization of how I still look at my own particular anxiety issues, and I've come to see that what's left, if you put it like that, what I've got left to deal with, things that still are kind of obstacles for me, that I'm beginning to see just that they're just not that important. They're not important at all, really. And I'm looking at them in a kind of philosophical way, which I've done this with many aspects of anxiety, things that have really upset me and bothered me over long periods of time. But I'm left with these few things that I still have problems with. So what I've done is to kind of think to myself, well, you've had all these symptoms, you've had these particular symptoms for however long it's been, and they don't change. They happen in the same kind of situations, doing the same kind of things, and they stay the same. They're not any worse. Some days, if I'm particularly tired or tense or whatever, yes, they can be a bit worse. But what I'm trying to say is that there's nothing permanently changed about me for having these symptoms, and this is what a lot of people think. They think they're never going to be physically right again because they've got all these symptoms going on. So I've come to look at it like this: that it really doesn't matter anymore if I get these feelings, and I know that it's the no longer mattering is what cures you of any particular aspect of anxiety. is because for so many people, the anxiety is the focal point of their life. It's the center of attention. It's what dictates everything they do. And they work their own life around their anxiety. So in other words, anxiety controls what they do. And as I've often said on these videos, I've had plenty of that in my own life, but I've reached a stage now where I can think and look at things finally from the right point of view, where I think, well, what does it matter? I get these feelings, they still come. There's so much habit involved. I've had them over such a long time. Habit is what keeps them going, really. It's not that I'm particularly scared of them anymore. I mean, I do get sometimes, for example, my balance goes off, really off, if I'm doing something in particular, and I start to get a bit worried about it. But it's not how it used to be. Before, I used to get so upset by certain physical symptoms and certain experiences. They used to really throw me completely. And, you know, anything I was trying to do on a particular day when this happened, I used to abandon it because I couldn't do it. The symptoms, or whatever they were that were happening, were totally distracting, and I just could not put my mind on anything else. And it's that's changing. It's that because I've talked so much about this on these videos. I've read so much. I've read so many people's stories, and like I said, it's coming to see that none of it really matters. None of it. It's not. It's important to you now because it disrupts your life, and you know greater or lesser amount of information about your anxiety. You know certain aspects of it. You know, perhaps you know a lot about it, but it's doing what's necessary to get yourself out of it. This is what so many people find so hard, and this is what I mean by a plan. It's having a set of things you can do which gradually increase your confidence in being able to do what you want to do, what you like to do, and what you need to do, with as much acceptance of the way you are feeling. It's just doing things in spite of it all. But it's not doing it in this sort of tense, fighting way, which is what I see so many people do. They kind of screw up their courage and think, I've got to force myself to do this, I must do this. It's not some sort of a test. You're not trying to pass an examination here. This is why I keep using the word practice, because that's what it's about. It's practicing using these techniques that I talk about so much. And gradually, as you practice and you see the effect that this approach has on the way you feel, your confidence starts to build, and you begin to see that you can do so much more than you thought you could do if you do it the right way. And that is what the plan is. It's doing things to suit yourself. It's doing things that you think you can't do, just going ahead. And it doesn't matter how far you get or how little a distance you go or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's making the effort to do it. That's the important thing. And I've often said before, it's like for agoraphobics, even if you just go and open your front door and look outside, that's progress. If that's all you do, that's fine. If it suits you to do that at this time, that's fine. But gradually you increase what you can do, and it's amazing how this kind of, it takes away so much of the strain of doing the difficult thing, doing the thing that, and it's difficult because it gives you the most fear. I mean, I can give you a small example. I've had to, this week, one of my customers, I don't have that many now, ones I used to have and ones I still have, where I do computer repairs, and this lady I saw this week, to get to see her, I had to do a 25-mile car trip, and doing car trips of that length, it didn't sound very much to most people, but for me that's quite a significant thing to do because I don't do it very often, and it means travelling on the motorway as well, which is not my favourite place to drive. But I've had to do that twice this week. The first time was to collect your computer, and the second was to take it back. Now, in the past, I've done exactly the same trip, and the amount of fear on each occasion that I've carried with me, the tension I've carried with me, has been terrific. In a really sort of, white knuckles on the steering wheel type tension. I just wanted it to be over, and I used to rush through it to get it over with quickly and get back home. But as I say, I don't do this very often, but I did it this week, and although I must admit I did feel a bit weird, it's mostly my eye movement issues, which I've talked about in the past. I did feel a bit weird, and I still can't drive any great length of time. After about half an hour, I have to stop the car wherever I am and just get out and get my bearings. But the difference now is that I thought, well, does it really matter if I feel like this? I felt like this before. Nothing really, there was nothing to worry about. Nothing happened. I just felt a bit, or a lot, afraid. But when I went to do this thing, which I'd done so many times in the past, accompanied by so much fear, this time I just thought, oh, to hell with it. I'm just going to do it. I just went ahead and I did it. All the anticipation, well, not all of it, most of the anticipation had gone. Yes, I was still a bit edgy before I took off on the journey. I mean, it was like I say, it's no big deal. But from my point of view, relative to what I normally do, it was quite a big deal. And I went along and I just thought, well, I've got to do this. I mean, she's been a very faithful customer, and she's been with me for years, so it was the least I could do is to sort her problem out. So that was twice in 1 week. Within 2 days, I did 25 miles there and back. Well, that's the round trip. And when I came back for the second time yesterday, I felt this kind of lightness. I thought, well, why have I been making such a big deal of this in the past? Because all the trips I used to make and things I used to do, I used to wind myself up so much, which was totally unnecessary. Totally unnecessary. And I've learned now to just really to do what I keep telling you to do. I learned to fully accept how I was as I did the trip. And the difference was significant, really significant. And I found myself, when I left her home yesterday, I was chatting away to her, which in the past I would never do that. I was just sort of, thank you very much, I'll see you again. It was all desperate to get away kind of approach. But I felt kind of, I just thought, well, this is what I like to do. I don't like to rush away from places. I like to just enjoy the experience for its own sake, because I don't do so much travelling anymore. And I thought about it all coming back, and I thought, well, why did I waste so much time worrying about how I was feeling and what might happen? Why did I do it? So you see, I've learned a lot. I mean, there's still things I would find hard to do. Still, there's inevitably in everyone's life there's things that they find more scary to do. But if you've been in an anxiety state and you've been afraid of that state, afraid of your fear symptoms, doing things that make a normal person, or a non-sufferer, I don't like to use the word normal, a non-sufferer, things that might make them anxious anyway. For an anxiety sufferer, they've got the added burden, if you like, of being afraid of the way they feel. Whereas a non-sufferer just is afraid, and they know, what that feels like. So for a sufferer to put themselves into situations which bring about a lot of fear, that is what the program and the plan should involve. It means gradually doing more and more of this kind of thing at a pace to suit yourself. That's the basis of a lot of other treatments. Cognitive therapy, as I understand it, works along the same lines. So it's my usual rambling way. I'm just trying to say that you need to not just drift from one day to the next, not drift along hoping for the best, hoping that your anxiety won't be too much of a problem. You need a definite plan to follow. It's not set in stone, it's flexible, it's to suit your own circumstances, but it's always moving in a certain direction. It's always moving to do more than you thought you could do. And it's putting yourself into frightening situations deliberately, because you know that's what you need to recover. It's practicing being in situations with all the fear symptoms going on. It's not trying to switch them off. It's not trying to avoid them in various ways. It's doing it in spite of the feelings. And it is this that cures you, because you come to see, like I've just been saying, that none of it matters. None of it. It's not important. You make it important because it's such a powerful force in your life. The feelings you get are so intense and come so easily. It seems very important to you, and it can put you, as you see it, put you in some embarrassing situations and even dangerous situations if you're doing things with all this stuff going on. But what you're aiming for, as I said, is to get to a state where you think, what does it matter? What does it matter? To hell with it. Let's just do what needs doing, and to hell with the consequences. And I know many of you will think, well, I'm being too glib about it. I know perfectly well how intense all this stuff can be. I've had many years where I've had intense anxiety of one sort or another, and panic attacks. And I know what that feels like. From this distance, I can picture the days, many days, that I spent or wasted being so utterly afraid. And I look back with a kind of nostalgia, no, not nostalgia, just a kind of poignancy about it, because it all seems such, now, from my perspective now, it seems such a terrible waste of my life. But it wasn't, not really, because it was me learning. It was me learning how to handle my fear, and that's what it's all about. Anyway, I won't witter on too long, because I do go all around the houses talking about things. But I just really want to try and impress upon you the need to see yourself as working to a program, a recovery program. And what you need to do is really quite simple. The concept is simple, the actual doing is not simple, as you know. But it's seeing yourself gradually increasing what you can do. And it's seeing your attitude changing as a result of that. It is seeing that you begin to see fear in perspective. And as you do all this is the key thing, as you do all that, your body, your nervous system that produces all this fear starts to calm down. So it's a positive cycle. Less fear that you add to your own fear means that your nervous system has a chance to rest, to calm down. And gradually the symptoms themselves start to die down. And that's how it's been with me. And it's very odd, because another thing that happened this week is, for so long with me, going to bed each night has been this is going to sound a bit strange, but, well, I'm sure a lot of you will understand. Going to bed has always been the most nervous time, shall we say, for me, because I was never quite sure what might happen when I was asleep, because I guess, again, that's a legacy from my past suffering, because I used to have panic attacks so often at night, so often, and other horrible experiences. And when you're awake in the day, you can, this is my past bad habits, this is what I used to be, this is what I used to do. When you're awake in the day, there's always distractions, there's always something you take in mind of what's happening. But when you're in bed and say something wakes you up unexpectedly, it's like you feel especially vulnerable. And that was certainly true in my case, where panics used to come all the time. So when I've been going to bed, this is over such a long period of time, I used to always feel this kind of, what's going to happen tonight kind of feeling. But this week I had a couple of days where I still get a certain amount of this. Like I said, it's just a habit now. But a couple of nights this week when I actually went to bed, and I thought, well, what does it matter? If this happens or if that happens, what does it matter? For the first time in quite a long time, I kind of went to bed fully accepting that whatever was going to happen would happen, and not tensing myself up at the thought of it. I mean, it was total acceptance, which is something in that situation I've not been able to achieve much of, or at least not for a long time. And I really had a good sleep on both occasions. I felt resigned to accept whatever I might feel, and I slept really well, which is quite unusual for me, because most nights I wake up several times at least. But no, I really did sleep well. And that's another example of what you're aiming for, what your plan or your program is aiming for. It's being prepared and willing to let happen whatever is going to happen. I've been talking quite a while now, but just on a final note, this is one thing you need to consider. For all the things that you're frightened of, and the feeling, the anxiety, the lack of control that the feeling of anxiety brings, all the aspects of anxiety brings, lack of control, you feel as though you must try to control what's happening. What most people don't understand is that this feeling of controlling what they think they're doing to their anxiety, or in whatever form it takes, is an illusion, because you're not actually controlling anything. All your attempts to control, tensing up against whatever you feel, all these attempts are actually just the thing that makes it worse. So in other words, you don't actually have any control. And when I say that, you can think, oh, well, that's a horrible thought. But the point is, you don't have any control because you don't need any control. That's the point. You don't need to try and control your fear. You don't need to do it. If you stop trying to do that, you stop trying to put a lid on all your feelings, if you give that up, that is what accepting your fear means. Giving up trying to change or control anything about the way you feel. And as you gradually come to this understanding, you can see just how much you've been adding to your problems by this tense effort to stop yourself feeling a particular way. Give it up. If you learn to give it up, all the feelings that you've been desperately trying to stop, they just stop by themselves. You don't have to do anything about it. You just have to be willing to let them sort themselves out, if you like. It's just what they do. Your body will heal heal itself from this sensitization, which I've talked about a lot. It desensitizes, nervous reactions calm down, they get quieter, and that applies to all of them, all the feelings, including panic attacks. Letting go of this need to control. So anyway, on that thought, I've talked much longer than I intended, as I always do. But please bear what I've said in mind and look at your own situation and look at what you can do to kind of extend your life, if you like, in new directions. And when you do these things, when you do something that you didn't think you could, I mean, however small you might think it is, however trivial you might think it is, it's not. It's important to you. It's very important to you. When you do these things, you get this wonderful sense of achievement, and oddly enough, you get back a feeling of, being in control of things, which I've just been talking about. You feel more in control because you found something that helps you, really helps you. And suddenly, all this stuff, every time you achieve, however minor a success it is, every time you do that, you start to feel more like your old self. You feel more like you used to feel like, until anxiety got its hooks into you, if you like. So it's worth it for that wonderful feeling of achievement when you do something that you previously thought impossible. So before I talk anymore, on that note, I'll end it. So please do get out there and practice. Just anything, it doesn't matter what it is, anything that you think you can't do. Just, if it doesn't work first time, who cares? You practice again at another time. Keep on doing it. You'll begin to understand what I'm talking about here. You begin to feel it for yourself. You'll begin to feel that fear really doesn't matter. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.